Hello, everybody. I'm back for another session. Coming into the end of MeasureCamp Europe. So, Hector, you're back. Oh my gosh, dude, you're smarter than that. This is the second session with me. You don't want to do that. Okay. So, I did a GA4 session earlier today, and I was showing some Chrome extensions and got a few questions on that. So, I thought I would just jump in and do another presentation on some of my favorite Chrome extensions. So let me get started here. All right, so this I need to move over here and share screen 2. So hopefully you're seeing it now. Great. So I'm the room host and the presenter. So feel free to put stuff in the chat and the Q&A. I will keep an eye on it and try to make sure I can answer some questions. So let's get started. So GA and GTM debugging using Chrome extensions. Now I love the Chrome extensions and I use them every single day. So I hope I can share some of that enthusiasm with you. And I'll bet you a lot of you already know about these Chrome extensions, but maybe I'll show a couple of things that you're not aware of. So I am Fred Pike. I'm a managing director and the CFO at Northwoods in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Really happy to be part of MeasureCamp Europe, which is not close to Milwaukee, but I hope to be there again soon, one of these days at any rate. I'm also the GA GTM practice lead here at Northwoods. I'm a group expert for Measure School. I'm a DDU community expert for Data-Driven University, Data-Driven U. So anyway, I just love this stuff. What we're going to talk about today is 6 different Chrome extensions that, again, I use every single day. And I hate seeing a Chrome bar like this with absolutely nothing up in the extensions. No Chrome extensions added at all. This is kind of my default setup of what I'm using, and we'll go through these 6 one by one. The first one we're going to start with is the extensions gang. There you go, David. The first one we're going to talk about is the Google Tag Assistant, which you probably have already used. So if you've been doing anything in Google Analytics, you probably have this. So let me call up, let's see, where is that screen? There we go. All right. So the Google, the legacy tag assistant, as they call it, they say it's a tag assistant legacy. It's changing. It's going to be different. They've had that message up there for a long time. So what the tag assistant does supposedly is tell you if you have healthy tags, healthy Google tags installed on your site. Now it's kind of funny because the main claim to fame is we're going to tell you if your Google tags are installed properly. But if you happen to run Google Analytics through GTM, you will never get a green smiley face on your Google Analytics. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Google Analytics, you'll say it's a non-standard implementation. Well, geez, what is that non-standard implementation? It's through Google Tag Manager. So if you ever run Google Analytics through GTM, you will not get a green smiley face. If you only run the analytics snippet directly, or if you run GTag, then you'll get a green snippet. But everybody here wants to use Google Tag Manager, right? The other thing that kills me, and this is kind of funny, is the global site tag, invalid or missing account ID. So as you guys know, this is the GA4 measurement ID. And even now, Google Tag Assistant doesn't know what it is. All right, so it doesn't work great, maybe, but one thing I really like about it is the record feature. So let's take a look at what you can do with that. And this is where I tend to use it a little bit more than other things. So I'm going to start the recording. It's going to record every page that I go to, every GA event that fires on those pages. And I typically will follow the recording link across tabs. So if I go to a new tab, the recording will continue. So let's refresh this page to start. and I'm picking on our own site, on the Northwood site. So let's go to services. Let's go to, actually we could have done brand strategy. I just want to get a little bit of traffic. Go to the blog. Go to the GA4 hub on the blog. Back to the home page. And now, I'm not sure you can see it on your screens, but there's a tiny little red dot on the tag assistant, and that tells you that it's actually recording. So if I click on that, I'm going to stop the recording. I have the option of showing the full report or resume the recording. And so let's show the full report. The full report is broken up into two different sections. One, the tag assistant report itself. And then the second one, and I think the more valuable one, is the Google Analytics report. So if you have access to the GA account in this, like I'm logged into this Chrome, I'm logged into Chrome here. So if I have access to GA here, I will be able to see all the GA information that got sent, including all the views that are on the NWS Digital that are on our website. So I'm going to look at my main view, and I'm going to look at the unfiltered one, just to take a look at as an example. The where I typically start is with the flow, and this tells me my session start and what happened along the way. So we start with a page view. You can see that it went both to the unfiltered and to the filtered view. And the hit was captured without modifications. This is one of the cool things in the recording, I think. Let's go to the brand strategy page and look at that page view. And here, in the raw view, the hit was captured without modification. In the filtered view, the request URI, the page path, went from capital S services, capital B, capital S brand strategy to services brand strategy. So where is that coming from? That's a lowercase filter in my analytics, and you can see it showing up right here. So that's one way to test that the filter is working correctly. Even better, I think, is that you can actually change the location. So if I wanted to use my externally visible IP address, which in our cases, I'm actually at work right now. So now I'm going to run that same recording with this IP put in. Let's go back down to the flow. And if this works correctly, yeah. So in the raw view, the hit was captured without modification. The hit got sent to the raw view. In the filtered view, it was dropped by the filter, exclude NWS traffic, exclude Northwoods traffic. So this is a really nice way to test IP filters. And obviously with everybody working remotely and stuff, it's not quite as important as it used to be. But I remember when I worked with clients who had offices across the world, to test the IP filters that I had set up for them was kind of painful. I would have to set up a time with the people in the office in Munich or Hong Kong or whatever, and look at real time and make sure that the IP filter is working correctly and stuff like that. So here you can actually test it without having to go to Munich or Hong Kong, which actually I'd like to go to both those places. But this is a nice little feature. All right, so that is the main thing that I want to talk about in the tag assistant. Not that useful for telling you the actual health of the tags, although it can be useful, but more useful for the recording, I think. All right. The other thing that I can't show this because the error was actually fixed, but if you look at the recording and you have some errors on how you're sending data, they'll show up here too. So for example, you can see that I did a page load 1, page load 2. So I loaded 2 pages, and it wasn't until the 3rd page that the session actually started. I had something broken in how I was tracking, and this showed me, hey, those first 2 pages weren't being tracked for whatever reason. I don't remember what it is at this point, but you can see that there's an issue. You've got the little warning signal too, and this page had not sent a hit. So there's something going on here. So the recording, I think, is very useful. Moving on, let's talk very briefly about an introduction to the Dev Console, which most of you guys probably know, so I'm not going to spend much time here. But the Chrome extensions, the other Chrome extensions that I'm going to show, all rely heavily on the Dev Console. And the first one I'm really going to spend a little bit of time on really kind of really shows you all the data as raw as it's going to be in the Dev Console. So let's take a look at that and see what I'm talking about. To call up the Dev Console, there's several different ways to do it. I typically do the F12, but I'm on a PC. You can also go to Developer Tools and More Tools, and that calls it up down here. So what I wanted to show is kind of that raw view, and let's just refresh the page here. Again, you guys probably know this, but this is all the hits that are getting sent. And if you wanted to look at just the GA hits, you can filter on collect. And you'll notice that there are a number of GA hits. Some of them are V2, some of them are listed as V1, and the V1 is GA3, Universal Analytics. V2 is GA4. So raw data, pretty much raw data here. If we look at, let's look at one of these, for example, you can start getting some information about that hit that got sent. And it breaks it out. Actually, that's probably not a great one. Let's look at this one instead. You've got the query string parameters. This is a page view. So the EN is the event name. So you can really dive into here and really look at the beacon or the hit that got sent. But you have to kind of know what you're doing, what you're looking for. And so there are easier ways to get the same information. So rather than looking at the raw data with the fish swimming by, let's look at some tools that help us organize that data a little bit. And the first one that I want to talk about is the AdSwerve Data Layer Inspector Plus. And this is probably the most valuable one that if I could only choose one Chrome extension, it would probably be this one. When I end up on a desert island, it's going to be this one. So let's take a look at what this one does. Oh, and just a couple of things about the Developer Console if you haven't worked a lot with it. So there's a couple of things that I do. First of all, with these three dots, you can say where you're going to put the Dev Console. So you can put it on the bottom, on the either right or left. And typically, since I actually work with 3 different monitors, I'll put it on its own monitor. But since I'm presenting, I'm going to have it on the bottom here. The other thing that's important in the settings, make sure to, under the console, make sure to preserve log upon navigation is set. That way you'll be able to go back in time and see what happened on previous pages. If that's not set, and it's not set by default, it'll clear out every time you do a new page. So you don't want to do that. And then the other thing, when I'm working with the Developer Console on the bottom of the screen rather than on a separate screen, I'll also I'll get rid of some of the verboseness in the console, and I'll get rid of warnings and errors. If it's on a separate screen, I will track them. Okay, so that's the Dev Console. Now, this Data Layer Inspector Plus from AdSwerve really gives you a nice way to look at all the information that is being sent to the data layer, and it highlights them. So these highlights on the GA page view, GA timing, GA4 page view, all that is coming from Data Layer Inspector Plus. If you open up any of those, you can get pretty good information about that beacon, about that hit that just got sent to GA. And it's similar to what we saw over in the network tab, right? But it's kind of listed a little bit cleaner here. And you can see that in this hit, we have a number of custom dimensions being sent over as well. If we look at the GA4 page view, it looks very similar, but here's our EN, our event name of page view, a status code of 204. We always get a 204 with GA4. We always get a status code of 200 with GA3. So there's a few things you can do to add on to the data layer inspector. You can look at more analytics. For example, if you want to look at the Google marketing and Facebook tags, what they're doing on this page, you can click on that. And what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to show you another shortcut. Sometimes you just want to clear everything out of the console. This thing, this circle with a line through it, clears it all. So let's refresh it. There's our page view, our timing, our Facebook microdata. These are all redirected. This is typical for the Facebook stuff. There's always a redirect to the real thing. And then finally, our GA page view. So I'm not seeing any Google retargeting tags or anything showing up here. But if I had those set up, they would be firing here too, and you could look at them. So if you're trying to debug Facebook, if you're trying to debug what's going on with some of the ads, or if you're running Telium, I know there was a session on Telium earlier. You can look at all that stuff through here too. So just a really cool thing. And then the other thing, which I feel like I'm just kind of spouting off at the mouth here, but you can insert a GTM container. So if you're trying to test a GTM container on a website and you don't have access to actually install it on the website, you can insert it via code here, and then you can also block the GTM container that's on there. So I think I may have an example of this. Insert GTM container. So here's a GTM container. You have to specify the host, and here's what I want to block. So that's useful every now and then if you don't have access to setting up the GTM on the site. See any questions? No, we're good. One final thing that I like, and this is a setting, is I show the client ID, the Google client ID, on the actual each GA event here. So where does that come in useful? Sometimes it's one way to test that cross-domain is working. So let's look at a small example of that. And there's many ways to test, including the real way up here. But I'll show you what I'm talking about in just a second. And let's get rid of the marketing tags. We don't need those here. All right, so there's my page view, and my client ID is a 195 ending in 4599. If I go over to the donate, which is a different site but has cross-domain tracking set up, I'll know it's working because obviously the real way is because we've got the underscore GA query parameter sending along. But if I look at my client ID, it's the same thing we had over on the other page, right? It starts in 195, ends in 4599. That's exactly what we had over here. So just a way to make sure that the client ID is following along. And a nice little thing, I think, that can help in cross-domain tracking at times. Okay, so let's kill that, and kill that. We good so far? I hope. Cool. Anybody who's not, just speak up. All right. So what can we do with this Data Layer Inspector Plus? I like to think of this as the fast method. And if you've been at a presentation of mine before, you know I have a dog. I'm always going to have at least one dog. And so the fast is not only this fast puppy, but it's Fred's awesome sniff test. And this is what I use when I'm just exploring what's happening with a website. So there's some specific things I look for. And let's look at the Northwoods one as an example. And I use this when I'm initially talking to a prospect, when I want to see how sophisticated they may be. So I've kind of alluded to this already. Let's clear this and refresh. And not that we're necessarily the best company or anything, but these are the hallmarks I look for. So first of all, are there custom dimensions set up in the GA hit? If the client, if the Google Analytics account is using custom dimensions, that typically speaks to some level of sophistication on whoever is responsible for the GA. I mean, there's so few sites, it seems to me, actually run custom dimensions that if you see it in the wild like this, you're going, okay, so maybe there's somebody who knows what they're doing potentially on the back end who is setting this up. Another thing I will do is, and this is something I learned from Brian Clifton years ago in one of his books, are we tracking outbound clicks? So let's see if we've got, if I click on Facebook, for example, that's an outbound link, right? I'm leaving Endeavor's Digital, or it's opening a new tab. So what happens when I do that? Look, I get this message from Facebook, which you can forget about. But that one click did three different things showed that I'm tracking three different things. One is I'm tracking an outbound link, which is good. That's what I really wanted to do. Two, that's being tracked as a social media link of some sort or event of some sort. And three, it's a footer interaction too. So this shows me that someone has thought about how the tracking should be set up, and they're also tracking outbound links. So this is part of the things I do every time I go to a website. And if we had a little bit more time, I would just, let's pick a website and let's kind of look at it. But I like to just look at those two things in particular, custom dimensions, outbound links, and then just, let's close this. And then kind of work my way around the website a little bit and click on things that I think should be tracked. It might be shares, like we talked about in the GA4 session earlier. It could be, forms that are filled out or whatever. But if any of that stuff is happening and it's being sent to GA, it's going to show up in the Dev Console, and it's going to show up in Data Layer Inspector Plus. So that Fred's awesome sniff test, it's so useful for prospecting, for just figuring out what's going on behind the scenes on a website. And I first learned this from Charles Farina at a class he taught years ago at CXL. It's like, oh my God, you can actually see all the stuff that's happening behind the website? That is so freaking exciting. So I will not go to if I go to an e-commerce site and buy something, I'll always have the Dev Console up to see what they're doing. And we'll talk about e-commerce in just a little bit. All right, David Crow. All right, awesome. Thanks. All right, the next one I'm going to talk about is the Google Analytics debugger. Now, you've probably seen this before too, and that's this puppy right here. So when I turn on the debugger, it is going to take over all my space here in the console, because it's going to tell you everything that's going on. So you probably didn't see that. There's a lot that's happening, but let's start up at the top here. And you can see why you want the log transaction to not be cleared, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be able to keep going up. So here, finally, Jesus, it's so far up the page. There it is. Here's where it starts. Here's the beginning of the GA debugger. And look how far that one page view did, all the way down. I mean, that's a freaking lot of stuff. But if you're trying to debug something, if you're trying to figure out, okay, why is this not firing, or what weird things are happening, the debugger is really good. But I will tell you, I mean, I use it maybe twice a year, but when I use it, it's like, oh, thank God I had it. I never would have figured this out otherwise. But there's another really useful, I've got to show you, it's too late. There's another really useful thing with the debugger, in that when you put it on, it starts debug view in GA4. So we started this up. If I go into my GA4 analytics for Northwoods, you can see my account showing up here. So I did a scroll, I did a page view. I haven't done much yet, but that, as long as you have the debugger on, it's going to show up in debug view. Same as if you had done the preview mode in GTM. So that's kind of cool. And I don't know if you've ever been on the Google Merchandise Store GA4 account, where there's like 8,000 people in debug view, and they all say Google, and it's really hard to figure out who that is, who you are. So I just discovered something kind of by accident, which is if I, and it's too late because I already set it up as Google, but if I change my screen to a mobile view, and now I'm a Motorola, or I might be a Galaxy, if I had done that before I started the analytics debugger, then in here in the GA debug view, it would have come through as Motorola or as Samsung for the Galaxy. So that's a really nice way to differentiate yourself if you're going into a debug view where there's a lot of other people. You heard it here first. I've never seen anybody talk about that, so I think that's pretty cool. All right, that is the debugger, and I'm going to turn it off because it is just so verbose. So it's now off. If I refresh here, now we're back to a normal amount of information down here, but super useful. So there's our debugger. And as I said, all those things really help with prospecting, seeing if GA is set up correctly, et cetera. Boy, I'm kind of running out of time here. So I will speed this up just a little bit. The next thing is we started with the fish, then we got things organized, and now we're talking about presentation. What's a really nice way to present the data? Oh, I even have a video here. I mean, geez, I went all out for you guys. I hope you appreciate this. So what we're going to do here is show you the GTM GA debug from Thinkster, David Vallejo. And this is just a great Chrome extension. It's fabulous. So where would I use this? I primarily use this with EEC, Enhanced E-commerce implementations, like Porter and York. So let me call this up. That's this puppy. That's what it is up there. Here's the GTM GA debug. When you first call it up, you have to start it up again. So now we're going to refresh it. And I'm particularly interested in the EEC side, and you can see that nothing is fired yet, but we do have GA information, and you can see it presents it and organizes it a little bit cleaner than what we were looking at in the data layer with the Data Layer Inspector Plus. So actually, this doesn't look particularly clean, but let's find something that's. How about we buy that? All right, oh, it's out of stock. Shoot. I got to buy something. This one is in stock. I'm going to buy that version. All right, so we do have some EEC transactions already. We probably have a product. We have a detailed view. So it breaks it out nicely into what you actually looked at, the product ID, a prettier presentation than what we saw on the data layer side. And if I add to the cart here, hopefully this will work. We have an EEC, and there's now 2 transactions there, including one of them being the add to cart, the product ID, the SKU, the product name, category, etc. So all that stuff that is over here in the console is just presented a little bit cleaner and nicer over here on the GTM GA debug side. So now let's see. One of my sniff tests on an EEC site is how well do they handle a remove from cart? We just saw they handled the add to cart. How about the remove from cart? So here we have, let's see if we drop that down. We're going to update the cart, and we're looking down here to see if anything happens. And nothing happened. So the remove to cart is not working. And I can tell right here because frickin' nothing came up. All right, so we have some issues on this site. Let's proceed to checkout. Let's see what happens there.
Fred, it's Anna. The time is up, and the new session here will start in 5 minutes.
Oh, so. I see the 2 minutes. I'm sorry, Anna. Okay, all right. Sorry, guys. I spoke.
No,
I went too long.
Minutes. It's okay for you. You can just wrap up.
I'm sorry, Anna. So I have to. Oh, I have 2 minutes still, or I have to stop now? I think I have to stop now.
No, you still have time. Matthew is saying he's okay to run late.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't have much left here. So let me go back. Let me show you one more thing then, which I really like. Product instructions. Edit this cookie. So let me just talk about link redirect trace, and that'll be the end of it. The other one that I like a lot is the link redirect trace. And what does that do? That tells you about links that were redirected. How about that? So our old domain name was Northwood Soft. And that redirects to NWS Digital, which shows up right here. So you can see what happened. You can see if those sites are indexed. It gives you really good information about how that redirect worked and how big that chain was. For example, I had a problem a while ago where the page was just not loading, and looking at the redirect trace, it was going from one to another, back to that first one, back to another, back to the first one, etc. And finally, at the end, it says, Google recommends to not have more than 5 hops in a redirect chain. So there you have it right here in link redirect trace. It tells you what it is. And I should end now, but thanks all for, let's see, any questions or anything? Cascade Nightmare. There you go, David. Yep. All right, cool. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Sorry, I went on a bit long, but I could talk for hours about this. All right. Bye-bye.